The anti-pest army is being mobilised, local Facebook pages are buzzing, the MPI 0800 number memorised, and a swarm of publicity embarked upon.
A fourth yellow-legged hornet queen has been found in Auckland. The Ministry for Primary Industries says they confirmed the hornet yesterday after it was found on the weekend. The yellow-legged hornet is an invasive species which preys on honeybees.
This hornet's a real big concern for our not only our honey industry but our whole agriculture industry.
Apiarists are concerned and would love to see a whole lot of action right now to try and get on top of this.
But it's not just our honey producers and pollinators and 27 species of native bees that we're trying to protect. These creatures are dangerous to humans too.
When they sting you, that hurts, for instance. I've seen them in Japan, I've known them from Southeast Asia, and honestly, they're quite rough.
They're a real common source of anaphylaxis overseas in Europe and do unfortunately kill people from time to time.
And wearing a beekeeping suit isn't enough.
There are hospitalisations every year in places like Spain where people's vision has become affected by getting squirted with venom. The suits that we wear typically to deal with wasps or bees in New Zealand would be not sufficient to deal with these hornets. We would need special suits.
Kia ora, I'm Alexia Russell, and today on The Detail, what authorities are doing to eradicate the yellow-legged hornet and how you can do your bit. Now, just to be clear, this is not the hornet that killed an American father and son in Laos this week. That was an Asian giant hornet, the Vespa mandarinia, not the Vespa velutina, which is the one we're talking about today. A lot of people have been confusing them. I'll be talking to Victoria University entomologist Phil Lester to find out more about the yellow-legged hornet and how it likely got here. But first, the man in charge of the eradication program, the Biosecurity Commissioner North in New Zealand, Mike Inglis, on how the pest was discovered in Auckland.
Initially, we received 2 notifications from members of the public in June and July this year, 2 separate notifications. These first 2 detections were male hornets spotted separately in Grafton and Albany. And at that point, after the investigation was done, we did an incursion investigation, went out, had a look, etc. We didn't feel there was no evidence at that stage of any incursion, as there was no self-containing populations, and generally the males die off. So that was the first sighting in June and July before we had the sightings in October this year.
In Glenfield?
In Glenfield,
yeah.
That's correct.
So very astute members of the public, how did they know to call you?
I think we've built up a really good reputation over the years in terms of our hotline and responding very quickly. It's extremely amazing, whether it's through the successful fruit fly incursion in the North Shore or whether it was down south of Tago where we were dealing with the bird flu outbreak. We always find with that connection, our social media, that our public in New Zealand are absolutely fantastic. They care for their environment. They're very engaging. So again, we get a lot of calls to our hotline and our numbers throughout the years. And again, we absolutely fully respect that, and it's great to see that it pays off, and that's why it's such a strong system. We have offshore regulations, import health standards, we have people at the border, but also post-border when you've got the public, again in terms of biosecurity being a net and not a wall, that makes sure that the system's as strong as it can be. Because
you obviously cannot stop everything coming in, right?
No, that's correct. Obviously, we want to make sure with free trade we protect a $59 billion primary industry, so exports and imports are vital to the economy, but we've got to get that balance right. And generally, we are renowned in New Zealand for having a world-class biosecurity system, and a lot of that is down to not only the people that work for us, but our partners, our industry colleagues, and obviously the community. We've got a lot to be proud of.
And if this hornet got established, how much of that primary industry would be at risk?
Yeah, the bee industry and honeybee and our honey industry could potentially be at risk. Obviously, that's why we've set up a clear technical advisory group, and we've got experts from within New Zealand, entomologists, Vic University, Auckland University. We've also got specialists from in France where they dealt with this, and they're on the technical advisory group, USA. That's how we always build a strong cohort of technical advice.
So what is MPI doing about this? Because there have been complaints that it's not enough.
Hopelessly inadequate, that's how a conservationist and former beekeeper is describing Biosecurity's response to the yellow-legged hornet, a pest that attacks honeybees.
In France, they've lost up to 30% of their hives and all the rest are severely compromised. It's just going to be devastating if it gets out of control in this country.
We have daily calls with our bee industry colleagues. We have set up a partnership forum with those GIA partners in terms of Horticulture New Zealand. And that's why we respond quickly in what we do alongside the member of the public. We don't want this pest established in New Zealand, so we'll continue to do everything we can do to make sure that we've contained it and we're managing it.
And how many queens have been found now?
Yeah, we found 4 queen hornets, 3 with nests and a 4th with a nest in early stages of construction. And most of these have been round about the same area. And again, that's why we're very methodical, working alongside a range of partners to make sure we take the evidence and then we action accordingly. And that's why we're very specific about where we set traps. We manage that within the notifications. Then we're assessing the traps on a daily basis and then we'll continue to make decisions from there.
Okay, so I live in that area and I haven't seen any sign of changes. What is going on to make people aware or to try and catch these hornets?
Yeah, the social media posts have been out. We've also done a letter drop to over 2,500 properties within the area. We were at the markets at the weekend and we'll be at the markets again this weekend. Just continuing to do that. We have some media up there later on this afternoon. So again, through social media, through the leaflets drops and through the markets, just as we've done successfully just earlier on this year with the fruit fly, the response from the community up there and the local board, local councillors was exceptional, and I'm keen to maintain that contact all the way through this process too.
The fruit fly episode Mike's referred to was in February this year in the same area, when Biosecurity New Zealand placed legal controls on the movement of fruit and vegetables out of Birkdale. Staff are still in the area, checking thousands of fruit fly traps there every day, and now there are 120 hornet traps out as well.
My staff are very, very passionate. We respond extremely quickly. We rely on the community as a massive team here because we're all trying to protect New Zealand as well as the economy. So members of public phone in that line, that's where we get a lot of our intelligence, our post-border, and we do respond immediately, particularly if there's pests that cause significant concern.
So, I guess the message is don't hesitate to call you.
Yeah, absolutely. Take a clear photograph of it, whether it's a nest, whether it's a hornet. We've had over 1,000 calls, Alexia, and some of them are German wasps or other things that we're not in terms of managing. However, we do still encourage to phone up if you've got any concerns. Phone it up, phone the hotline on 0800 80 99 66 or take a clear photograph and report it online and we'll respond to you.
There's significant resource being put into the effort to stop the hornet getting established, and the cost hasn't been added up yet. But Mike says when you take staff time into account, it could get to $1 million very quickly. Beekeepers say it's worth it. Here's Apiculture New Zealand Chief Executive Karen Koss.
If we look at the pure export value of honey exports, it's valued at $400 million annually, but that doesn't include the incredible value of pollination. So pollination of all of the crops, the horticultural crops, the kiwi fruit, the avocados, even pollination of white clover as an alternative source of nitrogen. And we've estimated that that's worth about $5 billion in terms of the value to the agriculture and horticultural sector.
If the yellow-legged hornets get established, what is the risk to that?
So the big risk for us is, and a bit of context here is helpful, we've had very challenging times over the last 5 years. We've seen, for example, hive numbers drop by half in the last 6 years, from close to 1 million in 2019 to just sitting under 500,000 hives now. And these hornets are nasty predators, and experience from overseas tells us that it can result in up to a 30 to sort of 80% loss of colonies for beekeepers. And for a country that is dependent particularly on beekeeping for pollination, that's pretty serious, particularly when we're looking at hive numbers that are below 500,000 as it is. So we can't put an economic value on that yet, but it is of concern to us, obviously, and so anything and everything should be thrown at this hornet to eradicate it.
In terms of what MPI is doing, are you satisfied that they are doing enough?
So I think that initially the response was probably a bit soft, but they've certainly heard the message loud and clear from our sector, from EPNZ, from beekeepers, that it needs to be taken seriously, and I think they've certainly stepped up and they are taking that seriously. We have regular briefings with them. We need to make sure that we also as a sector do all we can to make sure our beekeepers are armed with enough information and knowledge to be able to spot these things and to report them back to Biosecurity New Zealand as quickly as possible. And we don't underestimate the value of the public as well in terms of reporting these. I mean, at this stage, at least, it has been in the sort of, hobby sort of areas rather than sort of commercial, but obviously we don't want it to go any further.
I know there are beekeepers who, look, we really need to get onto this. They would like to see a massive reaction right now. I don't blame them. I think getting rid of this thing would be really valuable. There's good reason for them to be really worried here.
Phil Lester is in close consultation with the industry. He's a professor of ecology and entomology at Victoria in Wellington. I asked him where the hornet is likely to have been imported from.
We don't know where it necessarily has come from, but my suspicion is probably it's come from Europe somewhere. So these are a species that invaded France in 2004, and since spread throughout France and much of Europe and into the UK. So we've sort of almost been partially expecting it. The queens can sort of hide away on goods, in a container or something like that. And they're hard to spot. They're just individual small wasps that are fertilized, ready to go, ready to build a new nest when they arrive. So, yeah, it's probably from Europe, but could have been from Asia, or could have been even from the US. There's a population now in Georgia in the US.
They are an invasive species that has just taken over Europe and the UK. And it is basically a carnivorous wasp that hunts honeybees, and they're very, very good at it.
So it's hitchhiked a lift on some wood or something, or household goods?
Yeah, quite possibly any of the above. So it could have been in a container that had a piano in it. It could have been in a container of ceramics, as it may have gotten into Europe that way. So a whole bunch of different ways that it could have come in.
So the queen would have already been fertilized, and she hibernates.
Yeah, so that's typically the way. So what happens in the behaviour of these is that in autumn, you'll have a mating event occur, right? So the new queens are produced in autumn, new males are produced in autumn. They leave their nest and mate, and then the males die. The queens typically will then go and find somewhere to hibernate for the winter. So that can be in lots of places. If you look in New Zealand, if we look in our firewood, for example, then you'll often see German wasps or common wasp queens hibernating in dry conditions under bark and that sort of stuff. So that's the common way it's done. They do it.
Okay, so there's more than one of them now, these discoveries on the North Shore. What does that suggest to you?
That indicates that it's quite possible that there was a nest last summer somewhere. So we're speculating, so we don't know for sure. But I would speculate that maybe there's been a nest last summer, and that nest has managed to produce more queens, and those queens have left the nest and somewhere in the Auckland region. It's also possible that a container has come into the country with multiple queens on it or something like that, and we're seeing those. But we don't know, but I'm speculating. My guess is that there was a nest last summer.
You'd have to be pretty eagle-eyed to spot it, wouldn't you? It's quite small.
They are quite small this time of year. So this time of year, they're in what we often call embryo nests. So they're small. They're about the size of a tennis ball kind of thing, or almost a bit larger.
The nests, I presume you're talking about, not the wasps.
Yeah. No, not the wasps. The hornets,
because that would not be a small hornet.
Yeah. There are bigger hornets, but these ones are queens are about 3 centimeters long. So they're longer than a typical queen wasp that you'd see here in New Zealand, and they're a bit more distinctive. Somebody was pretty good and clever in spotting them and reporting them. So this is fantastic to see them this early.
What would happen if this hornet got established?
It would be bad news, we think. From their distribution in Europe, it looks like they can establish in a wide range of conditions that New Zealand has. They seem to be able to tolerate our climate pretty well. And they'd likely do well here in terms of, well, New Zealand's got no hornet competitors and we've got lots of beehives. The hornets love to eat bees. They are bee hawks, sort of thing, that they'll hover outside a beehive and pick off individual bees as they return to the hive and will decimate a hive. They will kill off hives effectively that way. So they're hovering there. They're waiting for workers to go out sometimes, or to the slow workers that are tired from a day's foraging or an hour's foraging, wherever they've been out. They're returning to the hive. They're slower, they're easy to catch. They grab them, they'll kill them on the wing, and then take their bodies back to their nest as food for larvae. And they'll do that. There'll be a line of hornets outside a hive that are waiting to do this, waiting to collect bees as they return, and away they go.
And they know they're there, right?
Yeah, bees know they're there. And you can see it sometimes that you get bee paralysis, foraging paralysis, it's called, where the bees are just too scared to leave the hive, right? So they'll stay in the hive. Unfortunately, that's one of few reactions that these bees will do. We've got European honeybees that haven't co-evolved with these hornets. Asian honeybees have co-evolved, and they have some defenses around them. So those Asian honeybees will ball a hornet when it tries to get into a nest, or attack it and heat it to death effectively. So the Asian honeybees have some co-evolved defenses around them and can moderate their foraging, but European honeybees haven't co-evolved and can't deal with them.
And that's what we've got, European.
Yeah, European honeybees, yep. And in places in Europe, there are sort of, and where high infestations of these hornets, they've seen 80% colony loss of beehives, which is huge. More typical, you get down to sort of around 30% of hives are killed by them in regions, depending on their abundance and that sort of thing. So they would do a number on our bees. There would be a major mortality factor for our bees and could impact pollination in that way.
So you're talking now about things like kiwi fruit harvests
yep.
Anything
and
that requires pollination.
Yep. Yeah, so our clover fields, all the everything like the stone fruit and you name it. So there could be a serious damage to crops in terms of their pollination, but they eat other insects as well, other pollinators. They are a pest in terms of humans, so they will sting people, and their sting is much worse than, unfortunately, I think, than the common wasps or German wasps that we have now. They're a real common source of anaphylaxis overseas in Europe and do unfortunately kill people from time to time.
What are their natural predators?
Yeah, there are a range of things. So there are other parasites and pathogens in the native range in Asia. They have, and in Asia they have all sorts of things that'll go after them, including some hawks that the raptors that'll specialise on killing hornets and wasp nests that we are unlikely to introduce into New Zealand for their control.
What is the best approach when it comes to trying to eradicate them?
We seem to have found them early, so now is the time we've got to find any nests that we can. So the eradication of social wasps, of hornets, has happened before, so it's hard and it's really tricky to achieve. We've got to find all the nests basically and kill them off, all the queens and workers. So that's no easy task. But given the small spatial extent that we hope that they're at, now's the ideal and optimal time to be able to do it. If it's going to be at any time that we're going to eradicate, it's now.
So what, residents of Glenfield, get out there and start cleaning under your eaves?
Yeah, and watching and looking, right? So indications overseas are trapping can be useful, right? So there's little traps, protein traps and that sort of thing. You can make a trap out of a bottle, an empty Coke bottle or something like that you can make into a hornet trap.
How do you do that?
So you saw the top off and you invert it.
So like you cut it in half and put the top half inside the bottom half?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that the wasps can get inside it but can't get out, right? So there's they're sort of trapped in there, and you can load it with all sorts of things. So people overseas do put grape juice and brown sugar in it. People put beer in it. Sources of protein and fish, those sorts of things that'll attract hornets and to be able to get into it, especially this time of year in spring. They're after protein so that they can feed the juvenile hornets and get new populations going. So they're really after protein at the moment, but sugar will often do as well. Fermenting sort of beer will do it, that will bring them in. So there's a range of different baits that you can get, and you'll get all sorts of things at times, including some queen wasps, some German and common wasps, but probably nobody's going to miss those a whole lot if you get those as well.
And would you hang it from a tree or something?
Yep, hang it from a tree outside and just keep an eye on it is the way to go.
And if you get one, how do you recognise it? Exactly what do these things look like?
They're quite distinctive. So they are the yellow-legged hornets. So they've got yellow legs. So that's a giveaway. They've also got a sort of yellow on their face, a dark brown kind of black body, with a pretty distinctive orangey yellow tip on the tail, basically.
And they're about 3 centimetres long.
Yeah, the workers are a bit smaller. The queens are about 3 centimetres or a bit larger. The workers are a little over 2 centimetres, about 2 centimetres or so.
Would there be any benefit to them? I remember years ago we had the aerial spraying for the painted apple moth.
BT spray, yeah. Probably that would not be the typical approach that is used. So at the moment, it's we need to find the nests, and we need to go after those nests as much as we can. So those nests can be hidden under an eave, or in a basement, or somewhere that wouldn't be touched by a spray. The better way probably is we've got Vespex in the country, and I've heard that Vespex is a bait that's used for a protein-based bait that's used for German and common wasps that seems to be pretty effective. So there's ways of attracting and killing the nests, so attracting workers and killing nests that we really need to get onto.
Are threats like this becoming more prevalent?
I don't know more prevalent, but they are major threats, right? So New Zealand's been watching out for things like brown marmorated stink bug for many years, and that's another threat. Look, if that gets in the country, that could have major impact on us. Fruit fly, there's all those sorts of things. As we increase the produce and movement of produce around the world, and as invasive species themselves become spread around the world, then we're going to get more incursions, and it's going to be more of a problem.
You've just written a piece for The Conversation about this, I guess part of getting that message across. So you've had some really interesting stuff to say about how they're reacting in Europe. Can you enlighten us on some of that?
They're desperate in places, right? So where these hornets become established, they will hover outside beehives and pick off the workers as they're returning to the hives. And so beekeepers are doing all sorts of things, like standing out front of their hives with a badminton racket, swatting the hornets, which I can imagine being very satisfying in terms of killing the odd individual wasp and hornet, but not especially effective, unfortunately, in terms of controlling them and stopping their actions, right? You've got a hornet nest of 6,000 workers, which is, typical in autumn. Then swatting a dozen is just not going to have any effect. Especially, and you've got manuka hives that are helicoptered into the middle of nowhere. And if you get a hornet infestation near there in the middle of nowhere, then you're going to have hives that are gone.
The number to call if you see something you need to report is 0800 809 966. Or if you have a clear photo of a nest or dead hornet, email MPI on report.mpi@govt.nz. Or to make a report online, it's report.mpi.govt.nz. That's all for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. This episode was engineered by Alex Harmer and produced by Davina Zimmer and Gwen McClure. Thanks to Mike Inglis, Phil Lester and Karen Koss. I'm Alexia Russell. Mā te wā.